They say wild animals don't form bonds with humans. They say the wilderness erases all debts. But what happens when a creature of the wild remembers and returns a favor? This is the true story of a bond that defied nature itself. A story of courage, separation, and a reunion no one saw coming. February 2019. Wildlife Ranger Michael Harrison was finishing his patrol in the Bridger Mountains when he heard something that would change his life. Beneath the howling wind and the relentless bite of a winter storm, there was another sound. Faint, desperate, a whimper that cut through the blizzard like a cry for help. Michael stopped his truck, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped into the freezing darkness. The snow was falling so thick he could barely see 3 feet ahead. But he followed that sound. Through drifts that came up to his knees, through wind that threatened to knock him off his feet, he searched. And then his flashlight caught something. A small shape nearly buried in white. It was a wolf pup, no more than 8 weeks old, caught in a illegal snare trap, the wire cutting deep into her tiny leg. She was severely injured, hypothermic, trembling uncontrollably. Her pack was gone, scattered by the storm, or perhaps they'd already abandoned her. Her chances of survival were nearly zero. Protocol said to call it in and wait for backup. But Michael saw something in those amber eyes, something that refused to give up, a will to survive that mirrored his own stubborn hope. So he made a choice. He carefully freed her from the snare, his fingers numb and clumsy in the cold. He wrapped her in a thermal blanket and held her close to his chest, feeling her faint heartbeat against his own. Then he drove through that storm, racing against time, fighting his way to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. For 3 months, Michael visited every single day. He fed her by hand, bottle after bottle of formula. He cleaned her wounds with gentle patience. He talked to her in soft tones, telling her stories about the mountains she'd one day roam. He named her Luna, after the moon she'd howl through the clinic window each night, as if calling to a home she'd never known. Luna grew stronger with each passing day. Her wounds healed. Her coat thickened and gleamed. She became playful, tugging at Michael's jacket with those sharp puppy teeth, pouncing on his boots like they were prey. There were quiet moments, too, when she'd curl up and sleep with her head resting on his lap, her breathing slow and peaceful. And in those moments, Michael's face would cloud with an emotion he tried to hide, because he knew the truth that was breaking his heart with every passing day. Luna was wild, and the wild was calling her home. The day of Luna's release arrived in May, when spring had painted the wilderness in shades of green and gold. Michael drove her deep into protected wilderness, into a buffer zone near Yellowstone where she'd have the best chance at finding a pack, at living the life she was meant to live. By all wildlife protocols, by everything he'd been trained to understand, this would be goodbye forever. Wild animals, once released, rarely remember the humans who saved them, and they never return. Luna hesitated at the crate door. She looked back at him with those amber eyes, and for a moment, Michael wondered if she understood. He nodded, encouraging her forward, even as his throat tightened. She stepped out slowly, testing the air, her nose lifted to catch scents she'd only dreamed of behind clinic walls. Then she ran, into the tree-lean, into the shadows and the sunlight filtering through ancient pines. One last look back, and then she was gone. Later, in a recording Michael would make, his voice would be quiet and strained. I told myself I did the right thing, but driving away, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. 2 years passed. Michael threw himself into his work with a kind of desperate focus. He continued his patrols, rescued other animals, documented wolf populations from a distance. He'd track packs through his telescope for hours, scanning their movements, studying their behavior, always wondering if one of those distant shapes might be her. At night, he'd pull out the photo of Luna on his phone, staring at it until his eyes burned. But the wilderness kept its secrets. Luna had vanished into the vast expanse of protected land, becoming what she was always meant to be: wild, free, forgotten. Then, one July afternoon in 2021, everything changed. Michael was investigating reports of grisly activity in a remote section of forest. He hiked alone through dense woodland, checking his maps, radioing his position back to base. The day had started clear, but weather in the mountains is unpredictable. Fog began rolling in, thick and disorienting, turning the familiar forest into something alien and unknowable. He heard the sound first. Breaking branches, heavy footfalls. Michael froze, every instinct screaming danger. Through the mist, a massive shape began to materialize, and then he saw her clearly. A grizzly bear, 600 pounds of muscle and primal fury. But worse than that, much worse, he realized with sinking dread what he'd done. He'd stumbled between a mother and her cubs. Grizzly bears are responsible for most fatal wildlife attacks in North America. And Michael had just made the deadliest mistake a person can make in bear country. Scientists say wild animals don't form emotional bonds with humans, that their survival instincts override everything else. But Michael Harrison knows different. In the wild heart of America, across the vast distance between captivity and freedom, one wolf remembered, and in the moment he needed her most, she returned. Luna was tracked via trail cameras for 3 more years. She successfully led her pack and raised 2 litters of pups. Michael Harrison continues his work protecting wildlife in Montana. This was the last bond. Have you ever experienced a connection with a wild animal? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if this story moved you, subscribe for more incredible true stories where human and nature collide.